I found out my 19-year-old son has been stealing money from home, doing drugs, and running a secret casino. And I don't even know where to start with him. Am I overreacting? Or is this as bad as it feels? Okay, Reddit, I never thought I'd be writing one of these posts about my own kid, but here we are. I'm a 45-year-old mom and my son, let's call him Jason, is 19. Up until recently, I thought I had a pretty solid handle on him. Decent grades in high school, a few jobs here and there, seemed like a normal kid who liked video games too much but nothing alarming. But over the past few months something changed. Little things at first. Money disappearing from my wallet, him getting defensive about where he's been, and this sudden obsession with expensive stuff, clothes, gadgets, you name it. I noticed he started hanging out with sketchy people, the kind that make me squint and think, who the hell are these kids and why are they around my house? At first, I chalked it up to teenage rebellion, or maybe he just wanted some independence. But then he started coming home late at night, smelling faintly of smoke or something stronger, and he started lying constantly, little lies at first like where he was and then bigger ones about money or jobs. My gut told me something was very wrong. I tried talking to him gently at first, asking where his money was going, who he was with, but he shrugged me off. Typical teenage, well, almost adult arrogance, right? But deep down I knew this wasn't just a phase. Something bigger was happening. And honestly, I was scared. I had a feeling the storm was coming. I just didn't know how bad it was going to be. If you like this tone, I can continue with part 2. Discovery, where she starts noticing concrete evidence of his stealing, drugs, and casino operation, keeping the story raw, detailed, and full of tension. Okay, Reddit, this is where things really went off the rails. I didn't exactly catch him in the act at first, but the clues started piling up so fast I couldn't ignore them. Started with money. Small amounts missing here and there, at first $20, $50. I thought maybe I misplaced it, but then I noticed my wallet and a few envelopes with cash were mysteriously empty. I asked him casually and he rolled his eyes, muttered something about borrowing it, and stormed off. That was the first real red flag. Borrowing my money without asking? At 19? Not okay. Then came the smells. One night I went into his room to drop off some laundry, and the air was thick with this chemical, almost fruity smell. I sniffed around and found rolling papers, little baggies, and a pipe tucked behind his desk. Drugs. My kid, my baby, was using drugs. I almost dropped everything. The final straw came a week later. I was looking for some paperwork in the basement and stumbled across a table set up like a tiny casino. Playing cards, chips, and even a ledger with names and amounts written down. My son had been running a freaking casino out of our basement. For money. For other kids his age. For God knows how long. I stood there frozen, trying to process what I'd just seen. My mind was racing. How did I miss this? What the hell is happening with my kid? Am I a bad mom? And then of course he walked in and caught me staring. His face froze, then quickly twisted into that smirk he thinks is charming. Mom, he said like I was overreacting. It's not what it looks like. Oh, it looked exactly like it. So, Reddit, this is where I lost my calm completely. I closed the basement door behind me and said, flat out, Jason, what the hell is going on here? Drugs? Stealing money? A casino in my house? He froze for a second, then laughed. Not a nervous laugh. A full-on vulgar, you don't get me laugh. Jesus, Mom, chill. It's not like I'm hurting anyone, he said, rolling his eyes and tossing a chip at my feet. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him until he admitted he was wrong. Not hurting anyone? I shouted. You're lying, stealing, and probably ruining your life, and you think that's fine? He shrugged like I was crazy, muttered a string of curses, and accused me of overreacting and being controlling. He even tried to gaslight me, saying the money I was missing could have fallen out, or I must have spent it myself and forgotten. It was shocking because he was so bold, so unapologetic, and so vulgar. Every explanation, every excuse was another lie piled on top of the last. He tried to charm me, get me to drop it, and when that failed he yelled and slammed doors. I felt every emotion at once. Anger, disappointment, fear, sadness. I was furious at him, terrified for him, and heartbroken that my child had become someone I barely recognized. And the craziest part? Even after this confrontation he didn't stop. He stormed out to hang out with friends, swearing he'd be back later, leaving me alone in the basement with the cards, the money, the drugs, and my thoughts. I knew this wasn't just a phase. Something had to change, and fast. Reddit, I'm not going to lie. After that confrontation, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Hard. I kept pacing the house, going over every little sign I'd missed. The missing cash, the strange smells, his constant late nights, the new friends who clearly weren't good influences. I felt anger, yes, burning raw anger. How dare he lie to me, steal from me, disrespect this home. But there was also this deep, twisting sadness. My baby boy, my little Jason, had become someone I barely recognized. Someone dangerous, reckless, and dishonest. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of what I had lost. His room, a mix of normal teenage clutter and drug paraphernalia. The basement turned into a mini gambling den. Even his laptop, full of shady websites and messages from people I didn't want to imagine him associating with. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined him making poor decisions, running further down this path, ruining his life. And worst of all, I felt guilt. Maybe I hadn't been strict enough. Maybe I hadn't paid enough attention. Maybe I'd let him slip through my fingers without realizing how far he'd gone. But alongside that guilt and sadness was determination. I refused to let him destroy himself, or our family, without consequences. I needed a plan. I needed boundaries. And I needed him to understand that actions have consequences. This wasn't just about anger anymore. It was about survival for him, for me, and for our family. After pacing and crying for what felt like hours, I finally made a decision. No more ignoring the problem. No more hoping he'd figure it out on his own. Jason needed boundaries, and I needed control over my own home again. First, I froze access to all household money. Bank accounts, cash, even credit cards, he had zero access. I told him flat out, if you want to be part of this family, you follow the rules. You don't steal. You don't lie. You don't bring illegal stuff into this house. He scoffed, rolled his eyes, and muttered, Yeah, Mom, chill. Typical Jason. But I wasn't backing down. I told him he was grounded from all social outings, his phone usage would be monitored, and if I found drugs or gambling paraphernalia again, he'd be out. No discussion. No negotiation. Next, I called his work contacts and told them to keep an eye on him. I even set up meetings with a counselor. He threw tantrums, cursed, and threatened to leave. He lied, begged, and blamed me for being controlling. But I stood firm. The hardest part? Watching him push back, knowing he hated me in that moment. But I realized something crucial. Tough love didn't mean he wouldn't be angry. It meant he'd have a chance to survive and learn from this. It wasn't perfect. There were fights, tears, and insults hurled across the house. But slowly I started seeing small changes. He stopped gambling in the basement when I was home. He didn't steal anymore. He started attending counseling sessions reluctantly at first, but at least he was showing up. It wasn't about me winning. It was about giving him a chance to make choices that didn't destroy him. And honestly, giving me a chance to breathe again without constantly fearing what he was doing behind my back. So, Reddit, here's what I've learned from this nightmare of a few months. First, kids lie. They steal. They push boundaries in ways that make you question your own judgment. But anger alone doesn't solve it. Setting firm rules, being consistent, and showing consequences does. It's not easy. It's messy. You will feel hated and you will question yourself, but boundaries save lives, sometimes literally. Second, drugs and gambling aren't just teenage experiments. When your kid is 19, they're serious red flags. Ignoring them doesn't make them go away. Facing them head-on is terrifying, but it's necessary. Third, tough love works. I know it sounds cliché, but I'm a mean but fair kind of mom. I didn't back down when he yelled, cursed, and insulted me. I didn't sugarcoat the danger he was in. And yeah, he hated me for it at first. But if I hadn't drawn the line, he could have spiraled even further. Finally, you can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. But you can create boundaries to protect yourself and your family. You can demand respect, honesty, and responsibility. And sometimes that's the only way to make them realize the gravity of their actions. Jason isn't perfect now. Far from it. He still tests limits. He still grumbles about rules. But he's alive, he's getting help, and he's no longer running a casino in my basement. That's progress. So to anyone reading this who's dealing with a similar situation, trust your gut, stay firm, don't be afraid to confront the hard truths, and remember, You're not being mean, you're being a parent. So after laying down rules and cutting off his access to money, I thought I had a handle on things. I was wrong. Jason is not subtle. About a week later, I caught him trying to sneak cash from my drawer. $50 this time. Not much, but enough to know he wasn't taking the lesson seriously. I confronted him immediately. Jason, I thought we had an agreement. He shrugged, leaned back in his chair and smirked. Relax, Mom. You act like I'm robbing a bank. It's $50. Chill. I couldn't chill. This wasn't $50. This was disrespect. This was him testing boundaries, seeing if he could push me over the edge. I told him flat out. One more time and you're out. No negotiation. No begging. You leave, you figure it out on your own. And he laughed. Oh, he laughed like I was the crazy one. But inside I felt this strange mix of fear and resolve. Fear because he's reckless, and resolve because I knew I couldn't let him win this battle. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining him sneaking around, running his casino, getting mixed up in drugs or worse. I realized this was going to be a long fight, and there was no quick fix. Reddit, just when I thought I had seen the worst, it got worse. A few days after the cash incident, I noticed Jason acting even stranger. He was jittery, eyes darting around the house, mumbling to himself. His friends, those sketchy kids I hated, kept hanging around the living room, and the smell hit me before I even walked inside. Sharp, chemical, unmistakable. I went into his room and found a small stash I hadn't seen before. Pills, powders, and a little baggie that smelled like something stronger. Not just casual smoking anymore, this was full-blown drug use. I froze, then grabbed his phone. That's when I saw the texts. Plans for deals, coded messages, and worse, mentions of money owed to shady people. I confronted him again, and his reaction? Classic Jason. Defensive, vulgar, and unapologetic. Mom, chill. I'm not some junkie on the street. I know what I'm doing, he shouted, waving the stash like it was evidence he had a plan. You're 19 and dealing with this? And what about the house? The rules? The money? I yelled. He scoffed, cursed, and said, You don't get me. You never get me. Stop being such a bitch, Mom. I couldn't believe the audacity, the disrespect, the lies. After he stormed out, I sat on the floor of his room, shaking, heart racing. I felt fear, sorrow, and rage all at once. I realized then that this wasn't just about stolen money or a basement casino anymore. It was about survival. His life could spiral out of control fast. I knew I had to do more than rules and threats. I had to intervene before it went completely off the rails. Reddit, I thought I'd seen everything with Jason, but the basement casino, it was worse than I imagined. One night I went down to check something, and the door was slightly open. Curiosity and maybe fear pushed me in. There it was. Cards spread across the table, poker chips stacked high, and his friends crowded around, laughing, shouting, drinking. I even saw one kid slip a wad of cash into his pocket. And then I saw the ledger. Every name, every bet, every debt recorded in Jason's handwriting. This wasn't a casual game. He was running a full operation. And some of those debts weren't just $5 or $10, they were serious. People who could cause trouble. Dangerous trouble. When Jason saw me, he tried to play it off. Relax, Mom, it's just a game. Nobody's getting hurt. I snapped. A game? You're stealing money from us, doing drugs, and now you're running an illegal casino in my house? Do you even hear yourself? He laughed, cursed, and shoved past me, muttering something about, You just don't understand. I felt my blood boil. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the people he was bringing into our home, the risks he was taking, and the absolute disrespect. I realized that if I didn't act now, this could ruin him, or worse, put us all in danger. That night, I locked the basement door. He went ballistic, screaming and cursing, but I didn't budge. I knew I had to take control of this situation before it got completely out of hand. Reddit, after locking the basement and finding the drugs, I knew this was it, the big showdown. I sat Jason down at the kitchen table, the ledger, baggies, and cash laid out in front of him. No yelling at first, just cold, hard facts. Jason, I said, this ends today. The stealing, the drugs, the casino, everything. I'm done playing games. You either get help or you leave. He leaned back, smirked, and muttered something like, You think you're so clever, huh? Mom, chill. It's just a phase. Stop being a bitch. My blood boiled. I slammed my hand on the table. A phase? 19 years old and running an illegal casino in my own basement. Dealing drugs, stealing money, and you call it a phase? He yelled back, cursing, swearing he wasn't hurting anyone, that I was overreacting, that the house was his domain. He even tried gaslighting me, saying the money I'd noticed missing was probably spent by me or misplaced. But I wasn't budging. I told him, "You're either taking responsibility or leaving. No excuses, no lies, no bargaining." And for the first time I saw a flicker of hesitation. He hated it, cursed louder, slammed the door, but that hesitation told me he knew he was cornered. That night I lay awake, heart racing, thinking about what had just happened. I realized being mean wasn't enough, being fair was. He needed boundaries, consequences, and help. And I had to be unshakable if he was going to survive this mess. Reddit, after that last confrontation, I knew I couldn't handle Jason alone. He was reckless, defiant, and deep into drugs and gambling. I needed backup. The next day I called a family counselor I'd researched months ago, someone who dealt with at-risk young adults. I explained everything. The theft, the drugs, the casino, his attitude, and his blatant disrespect. The counselor agreed to see him, even if he was reluctant, and warned me that Jason would push back hard. Next I reached out to my husband. He's always been let him figure it out kind of dad, but even he was shocked at the ledger and the stash I found. We agreed on a plan. Firm rules, monitored access to money, mandatory counseling, and a clear warning. Break the rules and he'd be out. I also discreetly warned some of his older friends' parents. They didn't know Jason was running a mini casino, but they knew he was acting strange, borrowing money, and using substances. I didn't want him in trouble with the law, or worse, someone getting hurt. When I told Jason he had to start counseling, he flipped. He yelled, cursed, called me controlling, and threatened to leave. He even tried to bribe me with favors and lies. But I didn't budge. For the first time I saw real resistance, not arrogance, not rebellion, but the kind of fear that comes from realizing he was losing control. And I realized something important. Even at 19, he was still a child in many ways. He needed guidance, even if he hated me for giving it. Reddit, let me tell you, progress with Jason was nothing like a straight line. It was more like a roller coaster from hell. First, I noticed little changes. He stopped sneaking money out of my drawers. The basement door stayed locked when I asked. He actually showed up to his first counseling session, grumbling the whole time, but he showed up. I let myself feel a tiny spark of hope. Then came the relapse. A week later I found a small stash of pills hidden in his backpack. He lied about where they came from and swore he'd never use them again in my presence. I was furious. I confiscated them and called him out immediately. "Jason, do you understand what could happen to you if you keep doing this?" I shouted. He yelled back, cursed me out, slammed doors, and stormed outside. But after a few hours he returned, sulking, muttering under his breath about how unfair I was. And yet he didn't run. He didn't leave. He didn't go back to the basement casino that night. That small action, showing up, staying home, obeying just a little, felt like a massive victory. I realized parenting a kid like this isn't about grand gestures. It's about tiny steps forward, catching him when he slips, and refusing to give up even when he's screaming and cursing that he hates you. And let me tell you, Reddit, it's exhausting. Every day, I wake up wondering what the next fight will be about. But even the smallest win feels monumental. Reddit, this was the part that really scared me. Jason wasn't just spiraling on his own. He had friends dragging him further down the rabbit hole. The kids in that basement casino? They were older, reckless, and had no respect for boundaries or the law. I decided it was time to confront them. I called a friendly chat with a couple of their parents, without Jason knowing. I explained what I'd discovered, the drugs, the gambling, the theft. Their reactions ranged from denial to shock, but most importantly, they agreed to talk to their kids and keep them away from my house. Then came the hardest part, talking to Jason about it. I laid it out, calmly but firmly. "Jason, these people are toxic. They are not your friends. They are influencing you to lie, steal, and break the law. You either cut ties or you leave." He screamed at me, cursed me, and called me controlling yet again. He even tried to threaten to leave for good, saying, "Fine, Mom. Watch me do whatever I want. You can't stop me." But this time I didn't flinch. I held my ground. I told him, "If you leave, don't come back." Your choices have consequences. But if you stay and cut these people out, you still have a chance to fix things. And then miracle or stubbornness. I saw the tiniest flicker of hesitation in his eyes. He hated me, yes, but he was scared. Scared of losing his home, scared of losing me, scared of the future he was wrecking for himself. That night he didn't call his friends. He stayed in his room quiet. I wasn't sure if it was progress or just avoidance, but I counted it as a small victory. Reddit, this is the part where I finally saw a flicker of hope. And honestly, I almost didn't believe it. After weeks of fights, yelling, tears, and ultimatums, something shifted. Jason started showing small signs of responsibility. He attended his counseling sessions without arguing too much. He returned some of the money he had stolen, claiming he borrowed it, but at least he admitted it. The basement stayed locked, and he didn't bring any of his sketchy friends around. One night, he actually came to me quietly and said, "Mom, I know I've been a complete asshole. I don't know how to fix it, but I want to try." I froze. My kid, my baby boy, the same one who screamed, cursed, and lied nonstop, was asking for help. I wanted to hug him and scream and cry all at once. Instead, I said calmly, "Trying is a start. But it's going to take more than words, Jason. Actions matter." He nodded, and for the first time in months I believed he might take it seriously. It wasn't perfect. He still tested boundaries, still pushed back, and yes, he still cursed at me sometimes. But there was effort now. And in my book, effort counts. I realized that parenting a 19-year-old who's spiraling isn't about punishment alone. It's about creating structure, showing consequences, and giving them a chance to make choices within safe boundaries. Reddit, after months of chaos, anger, tears, and nonstop drama, here's what I've learned from dealing with Jason. First, tough love is exhausting, but it works. Kids who lie, steal, or spiral into drugs need boundaries, consequences, and structure. Being mean isn't cruelty, it's protection. Second, communication matters, but actions matter more. Jason cursed me out, yelled, and even threatened to leave. I stayed calm, consistent, and unwavering. Over time, he realized that words alone wouldn't win him what he wanted. Only responsible actions could. Third, don't underestimate outside help. Counselors, family, even concerned parents of his friends, they all made a difference. I couldn't do it alone, and neither could he. Fourth, celebrate the small victories. Returning stolen money, attending a counseling session, locking the basement, and staying away from friends. Each step forward, no matter how tiny, counted. Finally, I've learned that love doesn't mean letting your child destroy themselves or your family. It means guiding them, even when they hate you for it, and never giving up. Even when the nights are long, the fights are brutal, and the lies keep coming. Jason isn't perfect. He still pushes boundaries, still tests rules. But he's alive, learning, and slowly becoming someone I can trust. That, in itself, feels like a miracle. To any parent reading this, don't ignore the signs, don't minimize the problem, and never be afraid to set firm boundaries. Your job isn't to be liked. It's to protect, guide, and give your kids a fighting chance at life.